I'm your guide and host, on the January 1st of a new calendar year. I greet you all the best for the new year and everything that the year has to offer for you and yours. Now, on this January 1st episode, I'm going to share with you what I've learned over the past calendar year, that is 2024, and to look ahead at what we have in store for this year, 2025. And so, one of the first things, in no particular order, that I learned this year is that we are not free. And by free, I mean we are enslaved, but not the slavery you're thinking about, either in the movies or textbooks or things that you have gleamed about chattel enslavement, and for which I've written about extensively. I'm not talking about that, though that is important. What I'm talking about here are the enslavement that we create for ourselves. And so I remember watching Gladiator 2. Just came out in the theaters. And while watching it, as some of you know who have seen the movie, and for those of you who haven't, I won't reveal too much. And so while watching the movie, there is a scene where there is a captive man, or former captive man, who was a former gladiator turned healer. And he says to the character Lucius, who's the main character that has been the son of Maximus from Gladiator 1. Nonetheless, this man is treating the cut and wounds for Lucius, who has been in various battles in the theater of action. And so while treating him, that is this man, and Lucius are talking, and the man says to him that I was once a gladiator, and that, he fought, and certainly fought for over several battles, and that he put his sword down. And once he put his sword down, he traded that sword in for the needle, as you were, because he was stitching the wound for Lucius. And what I took away from that was this, is that oftentimes the enslavement that I speak of is ones that we make of our own. In other words, we create our own demons. And that demon grows taller and taller and taller and taller from birth up until whatever age you are right now, if you're an adult. I'm sure a lot of adults are watching this. And those demons, in fact, increase not only in size and in width, but in intensity and power. And oftentimes those demons, which we're enslaved to, we're bound to, they exercise power over us. Has it ever happened to you that you will say or do something in a moment and then look back at it and say, damn, why did I say that? Why did I do that? In other words, it is your soul, that is your better self, that is essentially reflecting on an action for which your demon, right, your particular, spirit that you have created, that you're bounded to, whom is your holder or quote unquote master, that has exercised power and authority over you. Now, who gave that demon your power? Well, you did. I did. And like you, I have, my own that I've created over the years out of pain, bitterness, anger, frustration, you name it. And in doing so, that particular spirit or entity then becomes really what we're bounded to. And so we are not free. And when I say we, I mean everyone in the world, all 7+ billion of ours, we have our own particular demon or spirit that we have built up that is in control more or less over us, or has influence, I should say, in many of the things that we do and say, and on our actions and our behaviors. And it's to that particular spirit or entity that we are enslaved to or bound to. And so you can toss away imagery of cotton and tobacco and cacao, which is cocoa, and chains and whips, and think about the entity that we have created for ourselves. And every time we are dishonest with ourselves, are disingenuous, with our creator, our God, that we are inconsistent between our thoughts and our behavior, our thoughts and our actions, right? We feed, we grow this entity. And to us, it is out large. My goal for 2025 is not only to chop down to size, but to get rid of that particular entity that I've created over some 40 some odd years. and to rid myself of that and to be really free. Because sometimes we speak of freedom, we think of freedom in the abstract, in the theoretical. But what I'm speaking about is very much practical, because we can relate to things that we do that we look back on a second, a minute, an hour later and say, damn, why did I do that? Or that didn't make any sense. Or I got to do better. And that is that particular entity that we have created, right? It's of our making. No, it's not from the creator. No, it's not from our ancestors, and though they can play a role in many ways to influence or shape that particular entity. But many cases, it is our own creation, our own making, our own doing. Ever wonder why certain people can't do any good no matter how much they try? Well, because they have an entity that is outsized, out large. Essentially, they have created a gigantic, a humongous, entity that they are bound to, and they will do its bidding because that's what they've created. And so what I learned over the past year is to accept and recognize my own creation, and B, to begin to chop it down to size and to rid it out of my sight and my being so that I can truly and fully be free. Right? The second thing that I learned over this past year is that oftentimes, we think about how, these cultures over the world have their own names, have their own concept and conception of this creative force, of this almighty. And if you strip everything aside, what you find out is this, what I've discovered is this, is that whatever name you want to call, whether it's Buddha, Allah, or this or that, or Krishna and so on, whatever it is in whatever language, that those particular conceptions are valid for those cultures that have them. But there is an overarching, a large, essentially a CEO, or chairman, if you will, or chairperson among a board of trustees. And on that board are these individuated or specific, cultural supreme beings, in other words, that sit there. But there is a chairperson that is much more huger, larger. And the word is not even large. It's simply just in charge of that board of trustee. And I've had a few conversations. I've been fortunate to have a few conversations with this overarching force, which is a spirit, a great spirit, right? That can take on any and all forms. And what I've learned is that over the thousands or millions of years that human beings have been on this planet, this chunk of rock, which is our gravesite, because we're walking on a grave. In other words, we're walking on earth as many of us have been buried, that have come before us, that have been buried, over the long haul of human existence. And so we're basically walking on our own grave or somebody's grave. So on this big rock, this big grave, what I've gathered is that over the eons, over the eras, or whatever way you want to periodize or slice up, historical time, that this creative force, this almighty, has revealed itself in so many different forms and ways to essentially try to bring us back to some form of stasis and harmony with our true selves, our soul. And of course, it's a fight, because we human beings, we're our worst enemies, as I've said it before, about creating our own demons. But we're also our worst enemies because, we desire things that just we can't take back with us when it's time to go through that portal to leave this place called the earth. And we can't take this physical body with us. We can't take our jewelry, can't take our cars, we can't take, our condos, we can't take, our bank accounts, we can't take our 401k, we can't take anything. Thing is the key word here with us. But our soul, right? And whatever love we've obtained, that we have gathered over the long haul. And so it is this creative force, this spirit that take on any form that comes through us, that speaks through us, either through the different texts that have been created over the years, different stories, mythologies that created over the many multiples of thousands of years, millions of years, in fact, that have come down to us in different forms and eras. And so I've learned that, it's one force, one almighty creative force that takes on all these forms throughout historical human time, that tries to bring us back to a particular point, to be one, with the one. That makes sense. I've also learned this, that whatever is removed out of your path, by this creative force, ultimately, right, by the CEO, ultimately, right, that works through different mid-level managers, if you follow my analogy, that works through different interns and lower level employees. Whatever is moved out of your way is moved out of your way for a specific reason and purpose, but you have to be willing to want that thing to be moved. And I remember I was having a conversation with the same creative force, right? Not a specific one, but the ultimate one. Very short, but it was very clear. And he said to me that, because I was crying for some particular reason, which I won't mention here because it's not important. But then I got up and I heard the voice very, very clearly, right? And I looked over to my left, and it told me that I'm going to take away your burden, right? And go home and be happy. And it said, unless you want to carry the burden. And I said, no, I don't want it. And immediately, instantly, I felt released and relieved. And so what I'm speaking may not make sense to some of all of you, but I'm sure there's a few of you that will have some sensibility, some experience, or something within you that will feel exactly what I'm saying, that immediately I was released and relieved of that burden. And I did feel happy. And I did go home, to those folks that love and care about me. And I really, just felt that. And so I've had it in my life where I am a witness. And what I've also learned as a third or fourth lesson over the years is that everything we do and say in this human experience is recorded in a metaphorical book of sorts, but could be real, that records every deed, every action, every thought that occurs. Now, yes, it is true, as you might have learned from other videos by Nyame, that negative spiritual forces cannot read our thoughts, but the productive, positive ones can, right? And especially the CEO, right, can. And so everything is recorded. And sometimes the good that we do, that we say, can be reneged or nullified by the bad or the bitter or the hate or the anger things that we do and say about ourselves and about someone. And so whatever, let's say we do 10 things that are great, it's written down, and then we do 10 things that are just awful, right? It scratches out, nullifies that, right? Because ultimately, everything that is written becomes our judgment daily, and ultimately when it's time for us to go home, right? It's time for our souls to leave this body and to give us, our release to, where we ultimately belong, at least for some of us. That will be our record. And like I said a moment ago about the demon that we create, it is that particular, record that we create. It's our record, it's our doing, our saying. That will be our judgment. It won't be some ultimate force that will say yay or nay. It's us. It's what we have done and say that will be the record for our judgment, right? And by judgment, I mean for our evaluation in terms of are we essentially eligible and worthy to go home and join those who have evolved themselves to make it home, to be eligible to go home, right? And so these are some of the lessons and much more which I share with you in 2025 that I learned over the course of 2024. Now, as nightfall is coming down, upon me, I'm going to slow things down and leave it here for now and keep it short and brief. But I hope you will continue to join us and spread the word among those that you know who might be interested in what we have to offer here at Nyame, and do so with a kind heart, giving heart, a forgiving heart for 2025. Your best weapon in the fight against the forces that you create that hold you back is you. And that is being consistent about what it is good and great. Forgive those who have hurt and harmed you. You don't have to be buddies and friends with them, but you definitely have to be at peace with by the virtue of forgiving them and mean it. If you don't mean it, don't do it. May not be the right time. And so your best weapon is your greatest gift. That is this temple that we have called the human body and the soul, right? That is at one with the creator and creative force. And everything you do, put that creative force first, and everything else will follow. But Baba Nyame, I've been your guide and host. Until next time, stay well and have a prosperous, wonderful new calendar year.